wonder why conservative talking heads incessantly shift the country's focus onto endless culture war narratives that actually don't really have much of an impact on most people's lives? It's meltdowns over pronouns, non-existent CRT curriculum in elementary schools, questions about whether or not the green M&M is gonna be sexy enough when she's not wearing the high heels that she traditionally wore. That's the kind of conversation you hear from right-wingers day in and day out. Nonsense, garbage, trash. Now, the reason why they focus on that is because if they don't focus on that, they might slip up and tell you what they really think workers should deal with in America. And it ain't popular. I wanna give you an example. Here's Sean Hannity and an argument he recently made on his radio show.
Maybe instead of working a 40-hour week, join the rest of us, work 70, 80, 90 hours. And I know that people don't like to hear that advice, but that's what I do. Anyway, thank you both. David Bonson, Steve Moore. I've done that my whole life. Just keep working. Anyway, when I was a contractor, I remember I would work through the night if I could. You know, if people would let me stay, or if I was working in a commercial facility, I'd stay as long as they'd let me.
Does anyone really believe that? Mr. I sit in an air-conditioned room and simply read from a teleprompter and share my incredibly biased right-wing talking points that provide cover for the worst behavior in this country. Is that the hard work you're referring to, Sean Hannity? But I mean, think about that message. You should work 90 hours a week. How popular is that message? This is what they really think. This is what the right-wing ideology in this country has always been. On one hand, they'll argue you need to work endlessly, day, night, doesn't matter, night shifts. 90 hours a week, you should do it. Why not? Even if you're getting paid meager wages to do it, even if you're working full time and your minimum wage job can't even afford you a 2-bedroom apartment anywhere in this country. Doesn't matter, work 90 hours a week. Do it because I'm gonna pretend that I did it at some point in my life. He didn't. And then you have people like Charlie Kirk who think, I don't know, man, maybe you should think about working for free. Let's watch.
Hello from Montana. Charlie, earlier you suggested young people just get out of high school should go offering to work for someone for free as a trade, or at least that was the impression I got. Genuine philosophical question. How would such a young person support themselves financially in that case? If they couldn't support themselves, who could support them? Do parents have an obligation to invest in their young kids to help them become financially independent? Yes, you'd have to live at home probably for a year or 2 years, for sure, if you were gonna go work for somebody for free. But here's what happens, and we're getting emails affirming this. If you go ask somebody for a job, and after 6 months, they will pay you. By the way, if you ask them for a free job, just so you know, they legally can't even do that. There's intern laws, and they'll be like, okay, I get the point. But the point is you're gonna work so many hours or work in the night shift. By the way, it's okay to work 20 hours a day. You understand your body can take way more stress. I have seen the limits of the human body, would you say, Andrew, over the last 10 years? You could push yourself. And yes, you might get sick.
He's seen the limits of the human body. You might get sick. I mean, he has personally experienced sitting in a chair, twitching weirdly in his face, while screaming nonsense at his audience, while he lies about people, while he lies about what the real issues in this country happen to be. That's the real hard work that he's doing. He knows what that physical pain is like. No, this is what the right wing believes, okay? Everything that they say that tends to pander to working class people is irrelevant, when in reality, all they see working class people as is like slaves really for the corporate world, for the people who fund their programming, as you'll learn when it comes to Charlie Kirk and the billionaire backers of Turning Point USA, people like Foster Friess, a mega $billion Republican donor. He's worked really hard by sitting there, taking money from billionaires who use him as a propaganda tool to spout nonsense like what you just heard. So that's the reason why they focus mostly on culture war narratives that are meant to scare voters, that are meant to distract from the actual bread and butter issues that do impact their lives every single day. And I want to give you a sense of how bad things have gotten. I mean, you're probably living in this country, you're living in America, you probably see it all around you. And it's really important to be in the present moment and acknowledge what's happening and focus on what we can do to change that, not get distracted by the very intentional distractions that these talking heads who are funded by the corporate world want us to be distracted by. So let's talk about what elderly people in this country are experiencing. There's an organization, actually this is the University of Massachusetts. They have a project known as the Elder Index, and they're looking at the economic anxieties that our senior citizens are experiencing today. And here's what they found. 54% of older US women who live on their own and 45% of older men in the same situation are either impoverished in the richest country in the world by federal standards or cannot cover their necessary expenses, according to the Elder Index, a project at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. For older couples, the figure is 24%. So clearly, if you have two people living in the same household, they might have individual retirement accounts. So there's more of a chance that they'll be able to make it, but not everyone has a partner later in life. You might have a spouse or a partner who passed away. Maybe you never married. Maybe you like the single life. Get it, girl, I see you, right? And if you've made that decision or if you've ended up in those circumstances, you should not end up impoverished in one of the richest countries in the world. And I'm curious what Charlie Kirk and Sean Hannity would say to 81-year-olds who had a medical emergency that depleted everything that they saved for their nest egg, for their retirement. It's now gone. What do? Is it their fault? Should they go work 90 hours a day? Do you think that employers are gonna hire an 81-year-old? Do you think it's right for an 81-year-old to go to work? Why am I talking about 81-year-olds? Well, it's because this one story really stood out to me. So Kaiser Health Network interviewed Fran Seeley, an 81-year-old retired school teacher in Portland, Maine, whose monthly income consists of $925 in Social Security payments, $287 from an individual retirement account, and $400 from a reverse mortgage. Seeley's annual income of $19,300 falls well below the $22,560 the index deems necessary for an older adult in excellent health in a home they own with no mortgage payments. I mean, things are bad for the boomer generation. And the boomer generation, relative to what millennials are dealing with, relative to what Gen Z is dealing with, had it pretty freaking good, and they're struggling. So think about the looming crisis, the looming retirement crisis that's ahead of us when it comes to millennials aging, Gen Z's aging, and generations after it. So let's talk about what her situation is, because this 81-year-old is luckily incredibly healthy. With high inflation straining her budget even further, Seeley said that, quote, "I have to cut back in any way I can. The biggest worry I have is not being able to afford living in my home or becoming ill. I know that medical expenses could wipe me out in no time financially." Well, Seeley, it's your fault, girl. It's your fault. You just didn't work hard enough. You should have worked for free. Or, you should have put your body through more. Maybe you should have considered 90-hour work weeks. What's wrong with you? You didn't prepare properly. It's not the flaws within our system. It's not corporate greed that put you in the position you're in today. It's not the fact that Americans funded the research and development of the drugs that pharmaceutical companies are now price gouging you with, causing you to potentially go bankrupt in the future if you do have a medical emergency. It's not any of that. It's not any of that, okay? It's your fault, according to people like Charlie Kirk and Sean Hannity, because you didn't work hard enough. It's your fault. If Democrats were genuine in wanting to do something about our broken economic system, they would be hitting at Republicans the way I'm doing right now. They would immediately point to their BS culture war narratives and they'd say, no. I know you're obsessed with pronouns, and I would prefer to just respect people and refer to them with the pronoun that they like. You don't want to respect people, I think that's weird, but okay. But I'd like to now pivot to the fact that you like pharmaceutical companies price gouging our senior citizens into oblivion, into financial oblivion and ruin. Let's focus on that. But notice how it's only progressive candidates who do that. Weird, right? Except it's not weird. When you have a system that allows corporate interests to fund both parties to their liking, well, then you just have a bunch of prostitutes on both sides doing the bidding of their corporate donors, spouting the same talking points that we heard from clowns like Charlie Kirk and Sean Hannity. So for Seeley, apologies that you are living in fear that you might go bankrupt soon because you're healthy now and you might not be healthy in the near future. But don't worry, there's sound advice from Sean Hannity. Let's hear it again.
Maybe instead of working a 40-hour week, join the rest of us, work 70, 80, 90 hours. And I know that people don't like to hear that advice, but that's what I do. Anyway, thank you both. David Bonson, Steve Moore. I've done that my whole life. Just keep working. Anyway, when I was a contractor, I remember I would work through the night if I could. You know, if people would let me stay, or if I was working in a commercial facility, I'd stay as long as they let me.
If you're living in poverty, it's your fault. You should be working 90-hour work weeks. That's the right wing for you.